What's up, Magnetic Men Club? We are back here on another Friday with you guys. The Friday right before Christmas. So
Yes,
if you celebrate the holidays, Merry Christmas to you. Happy holidays to everybody else. Make sure you're out there with your loved ones, having a good time, making memories. And so today we're here with the topic of the dopamine overdose and kind of what that means. And I think this is something that we've kind of called out quite a bit in the past. We talk about how a lot of men's coping mechanisms are playing games, really out there scrolling social media. They're out there on news and forum sites. they're basically watching a lot of porn, that kind of stuff too, right? So we've called a lot of these things out. And we want to really kind of dive deeper into what that really means and the danger behind it and why you want to kind of avoid those things, why you want to control consumption of those things, what it's kind of doing to your brain and how it's rewiring your attention and how your attention is going to certain things that are causing you to maybe take actions you wouldn't otherwise take, right? So it's kind of controlling what you do and what you think and what you believe in. And so that's the kind of stuff we kind of want to dive into today, just to kind of bring a lot of that stuff to light and really tell you what you can do about it. I'm Chase. This is my good friend Jared here.
Hey kids, like Chase said, hope this holiday season is going to be amazing for you guys. I know, this is the last video before Christmas, so I do want to wish everybody out there Merry Christmas. Obviously we'll jump back on before the New Year, so I'll reserve the Happy New Year. But because it is New Year's coming up, the next stream we're going to do, and if you guys are not yet in our free course, I'm going to be developing a lot of stuff this week on creating and maintaining a habit that will turn into whatever your New Year's resolutions you have, how to take that goal and break it down so it doesn't seem so heavy. So, oh my God, I need to lose 100 pounds. Well, no, I'm going to give you guys some insights inside our app, inside our course. Where it'll be linked down below. So all you got to do is it's your name and an email and you're in. And we have a bunch of videos there you guys can take a look at. It's free. I'm going to put this in there specifically. It's also going to be, I'm going to put it in our Facebook group. And I think our next one, we're going to talk about goals because a lot of people get that wrong. And I really want to home in on that for the next video we do or the next live we do is specifically how to formulate a goal so that you have maximum success.
Nice.
Goal. But we are on dopamine today, and the effects of dopamine, good and bad, and what it looks like when you have too much dopamine or you have high levels of dopamine in your system. And that's what we want to talk about today a little bit, because millions of years ago, whenever the hell we got on this planet as humans, we needed dopamine. Dopamine is the feel-good hormone. It's not also a hormone, it's also a neurotransmitter. It actually helps regulate a lot of systems in your body that we need. Movement, it helps your memory, attention, focus, your mood, your sleep patterns, how motivated you are or lack of motivation you have. So as a neurotransmitter and as a hormone, you definitely need dopamine in your life. I mean, we have to have it. And what's crazy about the human body or the brain and the pathways is it's part of, I've been doing some research, so I am going to be looking down a lot, guys. I'm not a neuroscientist, but when I did some of this research, it was crazy that this feel-good hormone is actually designed where we're all hardwired to have it. And the reason why is our brains wanted to give us pleasure so we don't die. Pleasure in eating, pleasure in drinking water, pleasure in sex so that we can reproduce. That's one of the reasons why sex feels so amazing, is because all the dopamine crashes into us. We're like, hey, I like this. Well, you reproduce. That's one of the reasons. So it's not just how we see dopamine now and how we view dopamine as a bad thing because too much and oh man, that we're destroying our lives. It doesn't really work that way. There is some problems with getting too much dopamine or getting a dopamine fix the wrong way, but your brain doesn't know the difference. Your brain still thinks that feel good sense, that feel good pleasure mechanism is keeping you alive. It doesn't know because you're watching porn. It cannot figure out the difference because you're eating too much.
Right.
It doesn't know the difference. It just knows, oh, this feels good. It must keep me alive. Boom.
That's the thing. Like when it comes to manifestation, even with all that stuff, like what you have to realize is your brain is tricked into doing things all the time.
Mm-hmm.
You can trick your brain into doing things. Like that's really a superpower. What you have to understand is the fact that like your brain, it makes no difference to it if something is real or if something is imagined, right? And so it doesn't care if something's just on a screen on a phone. It doesn't care if you're just playing video games all day. It doesn't care if you're jerking off to porn. Like the whole point is too is like, yeah, I mean, dopamine is like very largely tied to pleasure, absolutely. But what it really is it's a triggering mechanism. So the thing is on your phone, you'll see a notification pop up. You're like, oh shit! Like if I click on that, there's something good on the other side of that. And so that's the thing is like that video games play on this too. They actually give you a whole bunch of rewards for doing certain things. If you do this and you do it in exactly the right way and you follow this exact mechanism and you get really good at this mechanic, you're going to get this reward and this reward and this reward. And they're all fake rewards. There's nothing there. It's empty. You still feel empty at the end of it. And so that's the problem is you're exhausting all of your dopamine on fake hits. Like you're not really getting any actual meaningful impact out of your life. You're not really feeling good about yourself. You're not really achieving anything. You're not seeing your life improve. You're not seeing yourself improve. But your brain is fooled into thinking that you are. And so it keeps doing those things and it needs more and more and more, just like any other drug. But the thing is too, is you need dopamine for motivation. You wouldn't be motivated to do anything without dopamine. Your brain sees something, anticipates a reward for doing something. You do the thing, it gets the reward. And so like it just keeps solidifying that in it. That's really all it is. It's a triggering mechanism. It's the habit loop. Like it's a lot of what James Clear talks about, Charles Duhigg in his book, The Habit Loop, all that stuff. Like there's a lot of research on that, but that's really what triggers it is the dopamine. And you're getting fake dopamine from it. And that's where media has really steered us wrong.
Sure. Media or really anything. So, I mean, I look at it this way, anything that makes you feel good, you're getting a dopamine hit. So going to the gym and, my girlfriend, she's a big runner's high. That's dopamine. So it's not always a bad thing if she was running 20 miles a day every single day where her body's breaking down just to get that hit. That's where it becomes a bad thing. So even really good habits that you have that make you feel good can turn in to something bad for you. But we're kind of talking about what she said, this idea that now, for the most part, everything we need is provided for us. We're not going off and killing stuff. We're going to the supermarket. Fresh water is on tap. Sex, if you have a girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever, I mean, we're not actively going out there, you can pretty much get sex. So a lot of stuff is done for us. So we don't really need the dopamine to survive. And then what's happened a lot of the times, I do about 12,000 years ago, when we stopped being hunter-gatherers and we started agriculture, this is when societies formed. This is when life became a little bit easier. Not, I'd like to live now, not 12,000 years ago, but it became a little bit easier where we're forming communities and we're kind of in our tribes. We're a little bit safer that way. Well, here we are, 2023. Your brain still doesn't know the difference. So you're sitting there jerking off to porn and it feels amazing. Dopamine's crashing into you. You have a bag of Cheetos next to you, soda or alcohol. All of these things are giving this euphoric effect on your body. You feel amazing short term, and then you have a crash. That's what Chase was talking about. There's always a crash. And it's interesting to note in my kind of like research that I did is the exact same areas of your brain that produce dopamine or this pleasure response are the same areas that produce pain. And so follow me on this. Your body, everything that we've always talked about here, there's a yin and a yang, an up and a down. There's a night and a day. There's always a balance. There's a balance in this, there's a balance to the world. There's a balance in the universe. Your body is balanced. So this is why it's bad. Follow me. We're going to use chocolate, something simple that we can all kind of, agree with. We all love chocolate. We take a piece of chocolate and we eat it. Think of your body as a scale. It's even, okay? There's pleasure and pain. It's exactly even. You take a little bit ahead of that chocolate and the pleasure part gets a little heavier, just a little bit. Your body is like, oh, okay, there's a little bit too much pleasure here. It has to start sending signals of pain. And what happens is it's creating what they call, bear with me, I forgot the name, homeostasis, a balance, okay? So what happens is once that feeling, that euphoric feeling of, man, that's the best fucking chocolate ever, that's awesome, what happens is your body starts to produce a little bit of guilt. Oh, I shouldn't have had that. Oh, man, I was on a diet. And what it wants to do is get back to homeostasis, but you have a little bit of guilt now, and then you still have the pleasure systems in your brain still firing. It's like, what's one more piece of chocolate? It was so good. It was so good. What's happening is called your craving. When you smoke a cigarette, when you drink beer, when you do drugs, that crash, think of it as your craving. You're craving that thing now, whatever it is. If you ignore the craving, if you're strong enough, eventually that craving goes away and you're back to homeostasis. You don't need that second piece of chocolate, okay? What's happening in our lives, again, it can be with porn, it can be with healthy stuff, but it can be with porn, it can be with alcohol, drugs, anything that you're getting pleasure from. I don't know who's watching this, but anything you're getting pleasure from, your body is trying to do the same thing. You just had a cigarette. Man, that was awesome. I was so stressed. I needed that cigarette. Boom, your body comes in and says, man, there's a little bit of pain here. I could die from this someday. I have a cough. Man, I smell. It's trying to get it back to where it never wants this thing, this cigarette. It doesn't want that. It wants to keep balance. Because you just had a dopamine hit, you had that cigarette, it went, damn, that's awesome. Now your brain has to really balance itself out. And it's just like, think about the teeter-totter. Maybe this is a better example. Think about the teeter-totter. You're both exactly the same weight, and some kid jumps on your friend's side and you go straight up. So much weight on this side and the pleasure. Well, what happens? As soon as that kid goes up, your weight goes down. You're the same weight as this person. Your weight goes back down for a second. See how it's balancing out? It goes down for a second, and then eventually it teeter-totters back. Your brain's doing the same thing.
Right.
You have to fight those cravings in order for it to sustain and maintain homeostasis. And what happens is we don't fight those cravings. We give into them. And it creates
that's
more.
Where discipline comes in. Yeah, obviously. Because the thing is, too, is we have a habit of doing certain things. We have certain beliefs in our lives. We have certain experiences and stuff that kind of drive us forward. And obviously, it all comes back to that habit loop. Like, you can learn a lot more about it in that book, Atomic Habits, actually, because he talks a lot about it, like how we have a craving for something. and then we want to satisfy that craving. So
Right.
the thing is the craving is the reward. So your brain's like, oh my God, if I do that thing, I'm going to get this reward. We need to do that thing. And so then it releases the dopamine right then. Like that, the dopamine's already starting to be released because it's already anticipating the reward. More dopamine gets released when your brain is anticipating the reward than even getting the reward itself. And then the thing is too, is once you get the reward, your dopamine is depleted. Like it completely depleted at that point. And in order to like experience that again, you've got to do that again. You got to increase the craving again.
Correct.
Get the reward again. And then it's depleted again. But the thing is there's not that much that time. And then there's not that much the other time. There's not that much when you do another one and another one and another one, because your dopamine there's nothing there. And so what happens is the rest of your life starts to feel really mundane.
Sure.
Like just sitting in silence becomes painful. And to a point where like even trying to like go out and talk to other people actually seems entirely uninteresting. Like I would just rather stay at home and watch a freaking movie. Like I don't want to go out and do anything.
Yeah.
And so it gets to a point where that's really how you're feeling about things. And so the thing is too, is even with porn, like you start to get unrealistic expectations for real life. One sec. You start to get unrealistic expectations for real life. So like you start to get to a point where you can't really get satisfied by a real woman. It's not as satisfying as finding exactly what you want in a curated deck on the porno website. Right. It's not as satisfying. Then the thing is too, you start rewiring your brain to a point where you start to get aroused by watching other people get off. And so it starts to take your brain to this really negative and dark place. And it's not a place that you would want to be. So you start experiencing exactly like you said, guilt. You start thinking like, oh my God, like I'm not this person. Is this really me? Is this who I really want to be? And then the thing is too, is even like people who are overweight experience this too. Like they'll overeat themselves. They'll completely drink like a whole 2 liter of soda, and they'll every single time without fail will feel like crap and think that they're a fat piece of crap. It's gonna be hell on their self-esteem. It's gonna be hell on their self-image and who they think they are. And obviously who they think they are and who they want to be do not align with the person that they see. And so they start to feel a lot of depression and pain because of that. And that's how this stuff can start to ruin your life. And so that's the thing too, is like I said, if you can't even be satisfied by your wife, by your girlfriend, because you're watching too much porn and you're jerking off too often and real life just doesn't satisfy you anymore, that's a problem, man. Like, can you see how that's not going to leave you feeling the way that you want to feel at the end of the day? And it obviously doesn't align with who you want to be. And so that's why this stuff has to be controlled. That's why it's got to be done in moderation. The problem is every single morning we get up and we're hit with notifications immediately. Immediately we're on Facebook. Immediately we're on TikTok. Immediately we're on YouTube. And that's the problem, is the fact that like that's how all of this stuff is designed, is to try and take as much of our attention as it possibly can. Yeah. It's a rat race for our attention. These big media companies have figured out how to monetize our attention. They're making billions and billions and billions of dollars every single year just by getting as much of our attention as they possibly can. They are out there, and it's their mission to waste hours and hours and days of your time and your energy in order for just to feed their bottom line, right? In order for them just to make more money and become more rich and more powerful and get out there so they can live their best lives. And you're missing out because you're consuming all of this stuff all the time. That's why it's important to put the phone down, really take a detox and get outside and do something about that and start to enjoy real life again and start to get dopamine from real life. Get motivated to do things that are outside. Go for a hike. Go to the gym. Yes, it's going to be uncomfortable at first. Yes, your brain's going to be screaming at you. And yes, you're going to feel that shake where you're like, oh, I got to get the phone. Oh, I got to pick it up. I got to pick it up. You're going to just find yourself scrolling for no reason all the time because it's controlling you.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. I agree. And that's definitely we're kind of going on two different things. This is signs of high levels of dopamine because chasing obesity, addiction, any type of mania that you may have, and even anxiety. If you are experiencing any of this, then you have high levels of dopamine or you're more proponent that you need higher levels of dopamine in your system. Okay. Because we could get into it. There are medical reasons why your dopamine levels might be jacked up. And there's also medical reasons why they're very low. Not everybody has the same, levels. And it's interesting to note when I did this, if you have low dopamine, you're tired a lot. You're unmotivated. You're unhappy. You often have memory loss, mood swings, sleeping problems, no sex drive, and a lot of the health issues could be you have ADHD, Parkinson's disease is actually associated with low levels of dopamine, and restless leg syndrome. So I thought that was interesting because I know we're talking about more of spiked levels and always that Guns N' Roses song, Mr. Brownstone. Do you remember that? That's kind of like dopamine. I used to do a little, but the little wouldn't do it. So the little got more and more. They're talking about drugs, but dopamine is, in a sense, a drug. It's a hit for our body, and we're chasing that. It can just be with caffeine, smoking, exercise, alcohol, anything that's going to create a pleasure in you for doing that act could become an addiction if you're chasing that more and more and more. So it is important to know you could have very low levels of dopamine, and then obviously very high levels, which Chase talked about, is somebody who's obese generally has high levels of dopamine because they're sitting there and they're getting pleasure from food. They're getting pleasure from sugar, sugary stuff, and they're living a sedimentary lifestyle. They're not active. They're also probably getting pleasure from their routine of watching TV. That's also creating a dopamine hit because they know, Oprah's on at 4 or whatever the hell they watch. They know these things are coming. They can sit, like Chase said, on social media, and every 5 seconds or 15 seconds, whatever the algorithm is now for TikTok, you get a new hit. Oh, that's funny. That sucks. That's funny. So Chase is correct. Social media has been engineered this way. Don't think it's an act. But here's the thing. Every one of us, to some degree, is addicted to social media. If you think I'm lying, walk outside and see how many people are looking down on their phone. So we're all addicted to this to some, I wouldn't say addicted. I would say we're all using this, and we are getting hits to a degree.
That's exactly the point that I was trying to make there, is the fact that, like, you see that. Like, you go to a restaurant and you see that the girl's not even interested in the guy. She's just sitting there looking at her phone the whole time, and she's scrolling and scrolling. Yeah. Guy gets up and goes to the bathroom. She's immediately scrolling. Sure. You see the guy's out there waiting for her while she's shopping, and he's out there scrolling. They're at every single corner of every single place you look at, everybody's just on the phone. Like, you see whole families on their phone, like mom, dad, all the kids, they're all on their phone waiting for their dinner to come. They're not even talking to each other. And so that's the thing. It's like, you got to understand, it's making real life uninteresting.
Yeah.
So that's the problem, is we really start to depend on that little device in order for us to be happy or motivated or to do anything or to feel anything. And so it gets to a point where, like I said, real life becomes painful. Real life becomes mundane. Real life gets boring. I don't want to go out and socialize with anybody else. I don't want to go out and find a real girl. I don't want to go out and do any of this stuff. I don't want to go out and build my own business when I can, build my business in freaking cities skylines or whatever, like Sim City or whatever it is, man. Like, whatever you're playing, that's the thing. It's like understanding that it's not real. Like, all of the social media stuff, it's not real. All the games and stuff, it's not real. It's not real satisfaction. You're not really building towards anything. And I'm not going to say that that's like pigeonholed either. I know that a lot of people make meaningful friendships on social media. A lot of people make meaningful friendships inside of video games. I'm not knocking that. And I'm not saying that you should never do these things either. I'm just saying that you have to do it in moderation. You've got to control how much this stuff is controlling you. You've got to control your attention. That's what they really want more than anything. And that's the one thing where you can say, no, I'm going to take my attention and I'm going to put it wherever the hell I decide. I'm going to put it towards something that's going to benefit me. I'm not going to give it to you.
Yeah. Well, you just said something really interesting. I want to expand on a little bit, ask you more, because you use kind of where I was going with this, and I love our talks because we kind of think the same. But you're pursuing pleasure to avoid pain. A lot of people have pain
Right.
in their life. Just most people's lives are incredibly boring, incredibly painful. There's traumas that people would rather not deal with.
Absolutely.
There's situations, maybe you're in a bad marriage, maybe you're in a bad relationship, maybe you've just gotten some health, um, some health issues that are going on. And we all do this. We all try to seek pleasure and we all try to minimize or run away from our pain. And this is why Chase said things like social media, but it gets worse than that, like into drinking and to porn. The people that, whatever your vice is, and everybody watching this, you have a vice. You probably have a couple vices. Now, I'm hoping some of your vices, like my girlfriend, I said, one of her vices is running. Well, that's good. It's not a bad vice to have, but you may have a vice where you're watching porn a lot. Well, you're escaping something. There's something inside of you that's painful. It could be a marriage you're in. I don't know, but you're escaping that to find that pleasure. We're all trying to do this. So I'm not telling anybody you need to do this, you need to do that, but you need to figure out though, what are you avoiding? What is so painful in your life that you're avoiding it, and you're replacing that with something possibly destructive? Could be, porn, could be drugs, alcohol. And you have to understand the thing that you're chasing is the only thing that you know how to mediate the pain. So a lot of people think, oh, this guy's just an alcoholic. Well, alcohol is the only thing he knows how to mitigate his pain.
Well, that's the thing too, is I don't think that anybody knows how hard it is. I don't think a lot of people talk about how hard it is to overcome this.
Right.
Like, we can sit here and talk about it like it's some simple thing and act like we're not guilty of it, but I'm
Oh,
as
yeah.
guilty of it as the next person. I do this stuff all the time, man. I do this stuff every day. I did this stuff this morning.
Yeah.
And so I'm not going to sit and act like I'm some saint who doesn't, scroll social media. There's certainly some things that I do. I mean, I drank a soda earlier today too. It is what it is. And so that's the thing. It's like, you got to realize, like, I'm no saint. Nobody's a saint. Nobody's free and clear of this. This is all stuff we're all guilty of.
Right.
It's not easy to stop. It's not. Like, it's not easy to stop eating if you've been binge eating your whole life. It's not easy to simply stop watching porn when you've been doing that for the last 15 years.
Right.
It's not simply easy to just quit drinking alcohol. I mean, we've seen whole 12-step programs originate from that, because it's a really hard thing to overcome. It's just like drugs, and dopamine is just that. It's a drug. It's a drug that your brain really wants. And the thing is too, is that's even worse, because now it's inside of you. Like, it's inside of your head. Your brain wants it, and your brain's just like, hey, your brain won't let you stop thinking about it. And so obviously it's uncomfortable when we try to stop doing any of this stuff. Like, people talk about like a dopamine detox, and like, okay, what does that really mean? And so I think that, like, I wrote down 10 different things here that I think we want to try to avoid when it comes to this. Like, obviously binging Netflix, all the streaming services, playing video games, scrolling social media mindlessly. Maybe you need it for work, I don't know. But if you're scrolling it mindlessly, it's wasting your time. Like, obviously that's not where you want to be. When it comes down to news and media and forum websites, trying to get into the drama of everything, that's not going to leave you a place where you want to be. Watching porn, swiping on dating apps, gambling, and blowing money is something I think a lot of people do to try and get that dopamine hit too. Eating unhealthy food, sweets and soda, consuming drugs and alcohol. Obviously, any one of those things it feels impossible to quit any one of those things, let alone all of them at once, right? And so that's why this stuff is so hard. It's easy to sit here and talk about why you should want to and try to motivate you externally to do certain things, but the only person who can motivate you is you, and it's done internally. And so you're internally motivated to do these things right now. And so you got to ask yourself, well, is this fulfilling for me? Is this something I really want to do? How can I really start to curb that behavior? How can I start to detox myself from these different things? Because it's not easy to stop any one of these things.
Mhm.
And it's because we do feel a lot of pain. We are running from a lot of things in a lot of cases. It's different for everybody, but I know that it largely for a lot of us, yeah, we're running away from our pain. We're running away from feeling empty. We're running away from feeling lonely. We're running away from being uncomfortable and bored and all those different things. We're trying to entertain ourselves. It's not that we don't want to grow and improve ourselves as people. We all want to do that. It's just that these things get in the way. It's like the devil versus God, man. And this is the devil at work right here.
Yeah, I agree. And I think a lot of it is too, it's very hard for us to feel or even want to put ourselves out there and be seen. We all, to a degree, now, of course, you can look at like a lot of influencer out there, people on TV, people like Elon Musk. They have something a little different inside of them. They know they're going to take shit for whatever they do, but it's their authenticity, what they're doing. But a lot of people, they're afraid to be seen. They're afraid to be different, but we're all unique. And so sometimes we do hide behind these masks of feeling. I know for me, personally, I've always dealt like this. Had these masks that I put on that I would put on differently for different people. Like, oh, I got to put the mask of success on for these people or to that. And in a way, it is creating a narrative inside of me where I felt like I was lying to myself. And I noticed when I was doing these things, I was coping different ways. Maybe recently I quit smoking. I can share that because a lot of you guys are thinking this guy smoked. Yeah, you know what? This might be a good example of this. When my son was born, my son's 19 now. When he was born, I quit. He's my last born. I have, my 22-year-old daughter. I had him. I was like, you know what? This is dumb. I kind of felt fulfilled. I had my boy. For whatever reason, I had my boy. And I just stopped smoking. And I actually stopped drinking a lot. I wasn't drinking that much, but I even stopped drinking. And it was for years. I never even thought about it. And then I got a divorce, and then the woman I got divorced to, my kid's mom passed away, and immediately I picked up smoking. Immediately that night, or probably that next day, I started smoking. There was a trigger. There's triggers in all of us, and as soon as I took that first cigarette, that first hit, I felt the dopamine hit. I felt relaxed. I felt that some of my needs are being met through this cigarette. And we can get through our basic human needs. We can certainly talk about that because our dopamine hits, how we perceive ourselves, how we feel, are directly tied to our needs, good and bad. And so here's my son at 19. She passed away 8 years ago. So he was 11. So I've been smoking about 8 years. Now, there were some times in there that I did quit for a couple weeks, a month, stuff like that. But for the most part, I was a smoker. But here's the thing. I don't want to say I was actually addicted to it. I enjoyed smoking. I enjoyed the high to a degree. Well, stay with me here. About a month ago, I was smoking the same cigarette. I wasn't drinking, nothing like that, smoking one. And I looked at it and I just started thinking, I'm like, what is this really doing for me? Yes, I know there's the benefit in my mind of that inhale, that I get it. Like, listen, I understand. And then I also knew all the bad things it was probably doing to me. None of that mattered until I actually looked at the cigarette. And I said, am I controlling it or is it controlling me? And when I realized it's controlling my life, this piece of paper with tobacco in it was dictating when I would stop working to go have a cigarette, what I was doing in my life. Oh, I got to go have a cigarette. Oh, I can't go there because I'm going to smell and I don't want them to know I smoke. It was dictating my life. This is new. This is when I knew beyond the dopamine of this that I was addicted. And I always said I wasn't, but then I realized I was addicted to it. And as soon as I admitted that to myself, that I have a problem, I'm addicted, I felt powerless. I'm telling you, hand to God, it completely escaped me. I put the cigarette down. I have not smoked since. And I've been drinking. You know, I drink a little bit. There's no triggers. So the point of this is I'm fallible. I have vices that even when I'm coaching, people are like, you smoke or you do this. I'm like, yeah, I'm not perfect. None of us who are talking to you on this live is perfect. We do have our own faults, but we are still here to tell you our story, to tell you, hey, man, I'm not perfect, but this is one way I kind of solve something that I know to me I'll never smoke again. There's just no reason to. And so I kind of just want to invite you guys. I'm going to start telling you some other stories about me. A lot of them are kind of embarrassing, but I'm not a perfect person. I didn't get to where I was by being perfect. I actually got to where I was by being so imperfect, fucking up so much, but then not laying down and licking my wounds, getting back up and like, fuck, okay, I can do better than this. I was designed by God. I was fearfully and wonderfully made. I was designed to do better than this. I have to do better. That's the message I want to get to you. If you guys are having an addiction or having just this dopamine, like you feel like this thing is controlling you, I invite you to really look at it, ask yourself, if it's controlling you and you don't want it to be, you have the power. You might need some help. It might be some coaching. It might be therapy. It might be getting into the group that we have down below. The link is down below to get into that group, but you're not alone in this. We're here to help you, and we're here to support you in any way. I know I went off on a little tangent, but I did want to tell you a little bit about that and how, I'm not perfect. So when I talk, I'm talking from experience.
I like that. See, that's the thing too, is I have the similar experience with that too. Like after my first son was born, I quit smoking cigarettes for a few years. Mm-hmm. And ultimately ended up picking it back up again, had to quit again. And so I've had the same kind of experience with that where I'm like, the thing is too, is like, you get that dopamine hit, like you start the craving and it's like, oh, I could just have the one thing. You start justifying it to yourself. You start saying like, oh, I deserve it. Like after everything I've been through, after what I had a really stressful day. Yep. And like you start to say all these things to try and justify it to yourself. Like you're trying to convince yourself, like who are you trying to convince here to do it? And so you finally convince yourself, you buy the pack of cigarettes and you're just like, and then you go and have that first puff and it's like, oh man, immediate rush. That's amazing. Yeah. You finish the cigarette and then you're like, man, all that progress down the toilet, all those years I didn't do it. I was so proud of myself. And now that's down the toilet. Yeah. And so you start feeling that way inevitably. And like I said, it's the same thing when somebody who is overweight and struggles with that, they eat something they know they shouldn't eat. And then they feel terrible about themselves after. Yeah. And then it's the same thing too, like with almost anything you can imagine, like everybody just ends up feeling this empty, guilty, lonely feeling after that. They just feel this empty pit, like that just comes out because your dopamine's depleted now. Like you've depleted it on the wrong things. And like, there's no real reward at the end of that. And the thing is too, is there's other chemicals at play here too. Like we have oxytocin. Like if I actually go and have a relationship with somebody in real life, I'm going to get oxytocin from that. And so it's like really starting to play with those other chemicals outside of dopamine and realizing that dopamine's really just there to motivate you. It's really just there to make sure that you do what you know you should do. And like, you won't feel fulfilled by the false dopamine in front of you, by like scrolling social media for hours, by eating things you know you shouldn't, by consuming drugs, putting your focus in the wrong place, feeling like you're wasting time. These things don't leave us feeling very good. And it starts to make us project things out too. Like we start projecting on everybody else in our lives. Like, well, they're probably thinking that I'm some lazy piece of crap because I'm playing video games all day. But what they don't know is this. And you start justifying yourself and building up this false reality in your mind of everyone around you, and you start to push everybody away, and you feel even lonelier and even more depressed at the end of it all. And so the thing is like you're not taking ownership. You got to realize that, okay, I've got to regulate this. I need to be in control. Who's really in control here? Is your phone in control? Is social media in control? Is the porn controlling you? Are the video games controlling you? Does it call your name when you should be doing literally anything else?
Yep.
Then it's controlling you. The thing is too, is then you'll get to a point where you're doing other drugs, like even smoking marijuana and that kind of stuff too. You'll be like, okay, well, I just need to get high in the morning. And so you'll end up going to the freaking pot store, buying that stuff, spending your last $20 on that. And it's like, okay, now I got high. Now I can do something. But first, I'm going to go play these video games and eat these Cheetos. Mm-hmm. It's just this slippery slope that I think we all find ourselves on at some point. But like I said, you just end up feeling that lonely depression at the end of it all. And it's like, you're not really happy. You're happy when you're doing the thing, but you're not happy when you come down. You're not happy in the middle of it all. You're not happy in the everyday and in the in-between.
Right. Yeah, like my kids, you know, they don't really drink that much, but they smoke a lot of weed. And it does bother me because a lot of people have that thought, oh, it's just weed. And it's like, well, yes, but it's still a substance that you're taking to feel better. And again, just like cigarettes, like I took it to have that hit. I mean, I get it. Believe me, I'm not throwing stones at all. But is it controlling them? And it is. Yeah, I've even talked to them about it in the sense of as soon as they get home, they go in their room and smoke a bong. It's like they need it in order to relax, in order to be like, all right, the day's done. I can be me. And I remember doing the same thing with smoking. Like, you know, if I wanted to go outside, I was stressed and I used the excuse, I need a cigarette. I didn't need the cigarette. I'm full and I'm complete by myself, but I needed that hit. And I know the difference now. And so if you are struggling, if you come up with these words like, I need to do this thing, ask yourself, seriously, do you really need to do it? Now, if you're addicted to something, this is a little bit different because I do want to talk to you guys a little bit on something that you can control, which just is consuming you, and something that you're addicted to. They're two very different things. Because not everybody's addicted to their phone. Like you may love your phone, but if somebody put it down for like an hour, you're not going to lose your shit. Like you're like, damn, that sucks. But there's certain levels to this, but there's 4 factors that you need to have. And if you guys have these 4 factors, if you have these, then you might have an addiction to this thing. If you have a compulsion to this, whatever it is, I don't know what your hit is, but if you're feeling overpowered or the urge to fuel this addiction, so it's a behavior that might have started as an impulse, like, oh, I'll have a cigarette with my buddies, like you just started it. Now it's turned into a compulsion where you feel like I have to have a cigarette. I need to have that. That's the first stage of an addiction. And the next one is that craving stage where it hurts. Like you ever see somebody who's like maybe alcohol, they get the DTs, the delirium tremors, where their hands shake. They have to have the alcohol. There's a physical addiction to that substance. And then you have consequences. Again, I'll use alcohol a lot because my dad was an alcoholic and I saw all this. Even when the behavior are generating negative consequences, you can't stop. He had like 4 DWIs, could not stop. He was forced to leave the union, could not stop drinking. And I love my father. He's still alive. He's doing pretty well, but he's done a lot of things in his life. The consequences, even when they're negative, you can't stop. And then the final one is control. You have no control of when or how the individual fuels the addiction. I might go rob a store to get the money for it. I might go kill somebody. I might go rob my mom's house, somebody's house and get jewelry to pawn. You have no control of how you're going to fuel that addiction. Those 4 things you're addicted to whatever it is. There's an addiction there. And it is important. I want you guys to know that because you might be listening to this far and be like, well, I don't think I'm addicted to these things. Well, if you hit all four of those, my friend, you're addicted. And until you can admit that, and until you can understand why you're addicted to this, what does this thing do for you? Is it controlling you? You can't get better. You're living in denial. What are your thoughts on that?
So that's where it comes back to why it's so hard to quit. And so that's the thing too, is obviously there's disorders at play. There's basically genetics, all that stuff too, the environment that you're in, where you grew up, what other people do around you, that kind of stuff. It all contributes.
Mm-hmm.
And so at the end of the day, whatever your vice is, like all of those things come into play for that. And so obviously there's a lot of trauma, I think, attached to it in a lot of cases, and you might need therapy.
Mm-hmm.
And so like that might be the viable option for you. I can't tell you exactly what you do or don't need. I know that you need support. Like I know that you definitely need support from either your family or your friends or from coaches or from counselors or whatever works for you or whatever the right option is for you. I guess it really just kind of depends on how much control you have and how severe the problem is and how much it affects you. These are all things that you got to kind of ask yourself. And so, like I said, the detox thing is, I think, the answer when it comes to social media and video games and that kind of stuff. I think if you have an eating disorder, that's something you'd have to approach differently.
Sure.
If you have problems with alcohol or drugs or anything like that, that's something you definitely want to approach very carefully.
Yeah.
But realizing that you have a problem is half the battle, and then seeking help, I think, is really the other 30% of it. And so obviously, if you really want to change and you really want to get results, I think the biggest thing that you need is support. So it's just establishing what kind of support you need and then avoiding the thing for a while, really starting to get on top of it. So I think that like even when you're trying to quit alcohol, like, I mean, just quitting alcohol, there's no easing off of it.
Yeah.
There's nothing like that, right?
Yeah.
It depends on how severe it is. It really does. I mean, I'm not basically saying that anybody should just go cold turkey on any one thing. I think that that's going to leave you feeling in a pit of despair. Obviously, that's going to leave you feeling in a way that you really don't want to be feeling. And that's another, I think, thing that you have to keep in mind. If you're feeling really depressed and you're feeling really low, you really need to reach out for help. And so that's the thing too, is I think when a lot of people quit these things, they're kind of just left their lives and they're kind of just left with how mundane things are. And they're kind of just left thinking about that euphoria that they were just experiencing and wanting more of it and realizing that life sucks. And I really just want to be drunk all the time. Life sucks. And I just want to go freaking smoke every 20 minutes. Whatever it is, we all cope with things in different ways. I think that getting away from the thing is the most important thing. Having that detox. Like if you're having a problem with social media, it's wasting too much of your time, you put your phone down, lock all your apps, delete that stuff off your phone, get a flip phone if you have to, just get away from the internet, shut it off. Whatever you have to do to take control again. And I'm not saying you have to quit this stuff forever. I'm just saying get back into a point where you're in control. And the thing is, too, is I'm not going to tell you that it's easy, because it's not. Because as soon as you stop doing this, you're immediately going to feel uncomfortable. You're going to feel shaky. You're going to feel jittery. You're going to feel like you should be doing something else. You're going to feel like there's a pit of despair in your life. You're going to feel very uncomfortable. You're going to feel like you're having withdrawals. You're going to feel lonely and depressed. You're going to be more irritable and angry. And you're going to want to feel any other way. You might even just want to sleep through that time. It's withdrawals, as with anything. If we consume something too much and we're used to having something in our lives and then we go cold turkey on it, we're going to have withdrawals. And so it's just understanding that you can get through it. But like I said, you need the right amount of support. You need the right kind of support too.
Yeah. And that's where that pain, that teeter-totter scale I started talking about, it's going to get worse before it gets better. Your body's trying to level out. It's trying to get back to that equilibrium or that homeostasis. And so, like Chase said, if you're watching porn too much, it sucks, right? Don't watch it, or limit it. Said, hey, instead of 3 hours a day, it's only 30 minutes. But it's going to feel foreign. You're gonna get those jitters. It's the same. You're having a craving. Eating is the same thing. Like I was watching with my girlfriend, that 600-pound, it's on like an A&E or whatever, my 600-pound life, or 600-pound. I can't believe they get this big. I don't understand it. But then I start, doing this, and I'm like, yeah, I mean, it took years and years to get that way, but and it's going to take years and years to go the other way, but they're avoiding something in their life. There's a pain they're avoiding, and they're dosing it with pleasure. And, the result is they're 600 pounds, health problems.
Well, that's the thing too, is like I went through where I tried to actually quit sugar for a month. I quit sugar for 30 days. I quit drinking soda. I quit eating all of like the sugary foods, all that stuff, and really tried to avoid sugar as much as possible for at least 30 days. Even in my coffee, like just having just the cream, whatever, making sure it was sugar-free cream, just getting that critical with it and trying to quit sugar for 30 days. I felt amazing. Like, for one thing, like I felt really motivated. I felt really clear-headed. That was some of the key things I noted. For one thing, like, I felt really positive, really enlightened. Like I was feeling like life was just freaking beautiful. But from there, basically, one thing that I noticed big time was that blueberries were sweet again. Like I could go eat a couple blueberries and they were sweet as hell. I remember eating a carrot and carrots were sweet. And I'm like, are you freaking serious? Like I could taste the sugars and things you wouldn't think there's sugars in. Yeah. And you really can't taste that when you've been eating so much sugar your whole life. And it just makes you feel like crap. Like it's not really doing anything for you. I mean, sure, it makes you happy in the moment, gives you more of that dopamine, but that's another thing. Sugar is one of the big things that you really got to watch out for in all of this. I think one of the biggest things you want to try and quit is sugar. Like you have no idea how much that's controlling your brain.
Now, when you went back to sugar, how did you go back? But really, what did you feel like the first time you had a Pepsi or whatever? What was your first thing you had that had sugar in it, and how did your body respond? And
it was amazing. It was amazing. It's just like when you have that first hit of a cigarette when you haven't had them for years. It's like, just that immediate head high, and you're like, oh my God, this is the best thing I've ever tasted in my life. But you only get it that one time, just the first time, and then it never happens again. It sucks, man, because like, even with cigarettes, like you get that head high, the very first one, you're like, oh, that's exactly what I needed. Yeah. And then you never feel it again.
You never feel it again.
You never feel it again.
You're always chasing it. It's funny. I was at the store the other day just finishing up my Christmas stuff, and this attractive girl walked out and lit up a cigarette. Now I was pretty far away, but by the time she lit it and took an inhale, she reeked. I like literally my attention was like, yeah, you're pretty, but oh my God, that smells. And I really thought with me, I'm like, I smelled that way. Mm-hmm. Like even my girlfriend, like she didn't care, but I know she did. Right. And she's gonna lie, but I know she cared. And now
nobody likes that smell.
Nobody likes that smell. Nobody wants to kiss an ashtray. But it's just crazy how when you remove that thing from your system, when you remove that reward, basically cigarettes I treat as a reward. Yeah, it sucked for a little bit. Like I did have some withdrawals. I was in a much better headspace this time than, starting back up. But you're always going to be triggered to do something in your life. And always you're going to want to revert back to a time where it felt good. So it could be eating. It could be too much social media, whatever your triggers are. Just remember, you're going to have them. Life is life. It's going to keep going. You have to replace or learn to replace some of those things that are not serving you anymore. You're getting your dopamine hit, but they're not serving you, and replacing them with something that can serve you better. That's kind of how I look at replacing a bad habit or anything that you're used to that's not really serving you. You have to replace it with something else.
That's just it. That's exactly it. And so it's understanding that like we as people, we only have a certain amount of willpower, and willpower is like a battery. Like I said, all that stuff comes from that Atomic Habit book. I think that's really helpful for somebody who's trying to quit something like this, going through that book for sure. But at the end of the day, he talks about how we only have a certain amount of willpower. And if you're wasting willpower on trying to figure out what you're going to wear for the day and trying to figure out what you're going to have for dinner for the day, and you're trying to figure out, like you're trying to get up in the morning at 5 a.m. and get on your morning routine, go to the gym and get all this stuff done. You're trying to do all that stuff at once. Your willpower is gone by 9 a.m. And then you feel burned out, and then you don't want to do anything else. And so it's understanding that, like, for one thing, you're dealing with willpower. You've got to deal with willpower the best way you can. So focus on the most important thing. Focus on the things that have the most impact, for sure. Don't try to quit everything all at once. Don't try to do every like cold turkey on this, go to the gym, get up at 5 a.m. You're just ensuring that you're going to fail. That's one thing I tell people when they first get into this program is if you try to do it all at once, you're going to fail. I know we're feeling motivated. I know we want to hurry and get up and get going with this, but take it one step at a time, because if you don't, you're going to fail and it's going to be hard, and you're going to basically be hard on yourself from there. And so that's the biggest thing, is understanding that we got to take this step by step. We got to put it into, biteable pieces. So the thing is too, is if you have a dream, as soon as you write that dream down and put a date to it, that dream becomes a goal. And if you have a goal and you break it up into steps and you have little milestones that you can celebrate as you go through it into achieving it, well, now you have a plan. Right. And plans are what really allow you to take action. And that's really what you're trying to get in place is you need goals, you need plans, you need to take action on the right things. And that's what we're talking about when we're talking about replacing this stuff. Because the thing is too, is it's not about quitting the stuff. It's about doing something else instead. Right. And so if you're doing something else instead, you don't have time to do all these other things that used to waste your time. And now you're feeling much more fulfilled. So rather than focusing on quitting and limiting the thing, focus on doing something else instead, and focus on exactly what you want to be doing as a person, who you want to be as a person. Do you want to be physically fit? Do you want to start going to the gym? Do you want to be financially free? Do you want to start a business? Whatever your goal is and whatever you're trying to do to try and level yourself up as a person, that's really what matters, because that's the stuff that's going to internally motivate you to do things outside of all of these cheap dopamine hits, right? That's going to motivate you to get out there and actually go and try and meet people and network and start a business. It's going to make you try and go out there and actually start going to the gym and start getting those results and start feeling good about yourself. And then you won't want to eat all the bullshit, because as soon as you start going to the gym, you start working out and you take it easy on yourself and you ease yourself into it and you just start doing that instead. This stuff starts to be really easy, and it's not nearly as uncomfortable when you approach it that way. And so what I'm trying to tell you is there is a way to approach this that can make it much easier for you. And we have mapped out that way inside of our program. That's why I would recommend that you start getting into the next phases and getting into our free communities where we're going to be putting all this stuff, and we're talking about this stuff all the time. We're here to support you. We're here to make sure that you actually achieve these things and that you get really clear on who you want to be and the character that you want to be, and the fastest path to get you there, and making this easy for you, making it a shortened path for you to get there so you can get there a lot faster than you would normally with all the trial and error.
Right. No, I love it. I love it. And this segues into next week when we talk about goal setting and we talk about some of this, because setting that goal, your goal might be to stop smoking. So, I mean, both of these lives sort of parallel each other. Your goal might be to get back into the gym. So maybe you're overweight. So we're going to come up with a plan for you next week. I'm going to give you, and so is Chase, going to give you some insight on what a goal actually is. A lot of people get it wrong. How to take that goal and break it down so that it's not the mountain. You're not attacking or climbing the mountain in one day. You're taking little trips to the summit, resting, and you're going. And so you're creating little pathways to get to the goal. And as you get to the goal, and you whatever that end goal is, as you get to that, it becomes more enjoyable doing it this way than creating so much unneeded anxiety that, oh my God, I got to lose 100 pounds in 1 year. Well, no, that's not a realistic goal to have. But can I lose 10 pounds in a month? Oh yeah. Well, then you just lost 120 pounds in the year. So you see how that works, and more than that, actually. So anyway, we're going to go to breaking down goals for you guys next week. If you have a goal that you have in mind and you want me to actually break it down for you, leave us a comment, go to our website. We have actually a chat widget. You can just say, hey, I have this goal. I want you to break it down in live. I'll break it down for you and give you action steps so that you have better success at achieving the goal. That's all I have, because I think that's going to be important for next week.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
for sure, for sure. I think a lot of people have the wrong view on that. Like, it's not about achieving the goal either. Like, that's not really what we're after.
Yeah.
What we're after is who we have to become to be the person who achieves that goal.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's really what we're happy about. Because the thing is, too, is I might have a goal of making $1 million next year, but if I only make 950,000, oh man, I'm going to be so mad at myself that I didn't get the million.
Right.
And so it's realizing that it has nothing to do with the goal. You're still going to be happy just because you became the person that you really wanted to be. You proved to yourself that you could do more. And that's what all this stuff is really about, is really getting that motivation to get up and be better and do better and be who we really want to be in the world, and really achieving that ultimate freedom that we're all after, because this is the stuff that's in our way. This is the stuff that we're trying to remove. And we really just want to live that fulfilling life.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I appreciate you guys staying in on this live. I know with Christmas and shopping and all this, it's difficult, but I definitely appreciate everybody that's watched this live and who will watch the live or watch the restream of the live. Again, if you have a goal, if you have a topic that you guys want us to discuss on these lives, or you have a topic you want me to do a video on for a YouTube channel, again, leave those down in the comment section and I'll get to work on that. With that, have a very Merry Christmas, and we will talk to you guys next Friday.
Merry Christmas.